Hello, Tandlers, and welcome back to TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. I'm your host, Nancy, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is an Encore conversation that continues to be one of our most downloaded and talked about topics, maximizing instructional minutes. We recorded this conversation last year at Pope Elementary with a fantastic panel of teachers who were recommended by their principal for their strong systems, their thoughtful routines, and the way they make every moment count for students. You're going to hear from a range of grade levels, from first grade to fifth grade, including Quest. What struck me then and still stands out now is how aligned they are in their beliefs about structure, community, and the power of intentional planning. They share very specific routines, visuals, transitions, and classroom culture moves, but they also talk about something deeper, how predictable systems actually create more room for joy, engagement, and the kind of magic that makes learning feel alive. Whether you're a brand new teacher, a veteran educator looking to lighten up routines mid-year, or even a school leader thinking about school-wide coherence, this episode is rich with practical, immediately usable ideas. And as always, the real value comes from hearing teachers reflect on the why behind their decisions, how community, respect, and clarity make learning possible. So settle in and enjoy this Encore episode from our visit to Pope Elementary. Let's get started. We are here at Pope Elementary talking with some fabulous teachers about how they maximize their instructional minutes. Let's start with some introductions. Tell us who you are.
My name is David Schlog. This is my first year at Pope, first year in fourth grade. I've been teaching for 27 years. Previously, I taught first, second, and third grade.
My name's Talita Chambers. I've been teaching fifth grade Quest for the past 7 years, and I've been teaching in the Puyallup School District for about 8 years.
Carrie Nielsen. I teach fifth grade. I previously taught fourth grade at Pope. I've been at Pope 7 years and been teaching about 15.
I'm Megan Horton. I teach first grade. This is my 6th year at Pope and 7th year teaching.
Thank you. So you were all recommended by your principal as people who really maximize instructional time in your classroom. What strategies do you use to make sure that all of your instructional minutes count?
So for me, I set procedures and expectations for everything I do. From the moment they walk in, where you put your folders, your book bags, your lunches, every transition, how do you sharpen your pencils, what do you do for peer group work, what do you do with buddy work, any type of student interaction, explanation, having expectations and procedures. This is how I want this done. Okay, so we're come to the carpet, you have 10 seconds, things like that. Or, okay, you have 15 seconds to get your whiteboard, come back to the carpet. I think procedures and expectations for everything, so they know what to expect.
I agree with that. I think that having visual cues along with those expectations and setting those expectations early on in the school year and doing that as a community so that the kids have buy-in. And then, we've been fortunate, our administration has provided us large timers that are posted up in every classroom. They look the same. So as you progress from grade level, those visual cues are consistent. And the students, I think, know, sometimes I just say, okay, you've got 5 seconds to put that book in your cubby. And I'm just visually counting down while I'm verbally saying it so that we can maximize those transition periods. And then more of the time in the room is spent on the instruction because of all of that foundation that we lay early in the year with procedures.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, even in primary, it works the same. Like I had to think about going slow at the beginning of the year to set those intentional routines with students so they know. And having the visuals, especially in primary, is really important for them and signal keywords that every time they hear that, they know what they need to do.
What are some common time wasters you've noticed, and how have you worked to minimize them?
I think this is a good one, and it goes with those routines and practicing at the beginning of the year. The time wasters of sharpening pencils, the time wasters of gathering lunch boxes and jackets when you're going to lunch. And so in our class, in fifth grade, we sharpen kids' pencils every morning. So they come in every morning with sharpened pencils. So we eliminated that time sucker in the morning, having a clear routine of where your lunch boxes go so that you're not trying to gather lunch boxes and jackets when you're going to lunch and recess. They're already together. And so I think the biggest time waster really is having to get things that kids could have already had you planned for them to have those items.
I think another one in our building, again, we're fortunate at Pope to have a remodeled building, but what that means is that our layout is pretty spread out. And so sometimes getting from specialists to the classroom or from the classroom to specialists, especially for us in the upper grades, getting from the recess area back to our classrooms, that can be a really big amount of time in transition. And so training the students early on from when we do our tour of the building at the beginning of the year, this is where we're going to be. And the expectation is the first bell, just reinforcing that you must be in line. And the second bell rings, we're going to start walking back to the classroom. If you're not in line, this isn't the time to use the restroom and all those things. Reinforcing that early on so that when we are transitioning across a large campus, we're just cutting that back as much as possible so that the time is spent in the classroom and not in the hallways.
And it's not just kind of this big grand idea. We do it, right? So if that first bell rings, we leave our rooms to go get the kids. We don't wait for that second bell to ring to then go. And so we honor their time also, that if we want you to line up by the first bell, then we are there by the second bell to move or not. Because I think it sets that expectation and it can set a precedent. If you're never there, why should they be? And so really kind of honoring the routines that you set up and honoring the kids' time as for learning.
Being organized, being ready to go. Being organized, being ready to go right away. As a teacher, most walking in the door, I know when to start. When I'm doing my CKLA lessons, okay, I'm going to start this time every single day. They know the procedures. They know what to expect. It's not something different every single day. Those kids with high ACEs and behavior problems, they need the structure, need the predictability. And so I try to provide that every single day. So my lesson plan is ready to go. Walk in the door, I can start teaching. I'm ready. They know what to expect. I think, them being organized, showing them how to be organized. And so we're not wasting time going from one subject to another, going from the carpet to your seat, being explicit with every transition is explicit instructions. Okay, when I say go, table one, quietly line up. So set the expectation, you're quietly lining up. The 1 year old, quiet, have a seat, do it again. I'm dating myself here with the whole Harry Wong thing, first days of schools back 20 years ago, stuff, and I teach like a champion type thing. So those quick reads, but really powerful for help you get some of those organization things and think about things you don't think about in your day. And
I think Carrie touched on something really important too, which is that mutual respect. And I think that all of us do that in the way that we start the school year with our clear expectations, but also getting buy-in from the kids when they are part of our creating the norms of our classroom and they're part of it, and then honoring each other so that I think the students really honor our expectations because we honor what we're expecting of them. So it's that mutual respect plays a big role. And seeing these teachers in action, I think that's something we have in common.
I was going to say, especially for primary, thinking about transitions and materials, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, they're going to fidget with their pen or they're going to be messing around and writing while I'm telling them, having those clear, explicit expectations, like my kids, I'm like, whiteboard, pen, and sock. Whiteboard and your pen and sock is in your lap, your board is on top, your hands are folded. I teach that on day one of school. And now I literally just say, get your materials, and they come and they do it. So I don't have any lost time of oh no, stop fidgeting, I need you to listen sort of thing. So having that, and we do it from the beginning and they have that buy-in and they all know, they're like, oh yeah, we should give them a CIA. They're doing so great. Like, they want to honor each other because it goes back to their class promise. They're lletting themselves learn, and like they are.
I love that, because we had talked about earlier that another big waster is kids getting from one subject to another, even though where they're in our classrooms, right? Getting from one subject to another, there are kind of guidelines, or I have a clear expectation of what's in their desk versus what's in their cubby, because there are things in their cubbies that we don't need necessarily every day. So, but the things that we need every day are in their desk.
Sometimes I use that phrase with my students. Oh, that should be living in your backpack cubby versus your desk cubby. Well, that lives in your desk. We should have it on our desks in 3, 2, 1. And then I just give that visual verbal combination because the expectations are already there.
And I'm hearing a lot of strategies that you have to teach, reteach, practice at the beginning of the year, right? That's a big time investment that pays off later. How does that work when new students come to your class mid-year? How do you get them up and going with your routines?
I think part of building class community, so when building a class community, a lot of the students actually help out with that because, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. It's like sometimes they jump in, they're very helpful themselves. If I'm giving instructions, right, okay, your photo goes here, the dude says, oh, turn this in here, oh, this goes here. They help out. They just jump in and naturally do it. And so that's nice to see because they take ownership of the classroom too. They're taking pride in their environment, in their work. And so I think it's just an extension of, that community, and they help each other.
Yeah, I think about coming from, like, if you were to go to a new job, when the expectations are clear, I feel like you're not lost trying to figure out what to do. And I feel like it's in our vernacular. It's what we say every day. Turn in your papers to the pink bin. Even though it's the same, I've had the same students for 2 years. It's the same pink bin, but I just say it. Please turn it into the pink bin, because you have kids after 2 years that are, what should I do with this? Put it in the pink bin, right? And so I feel new kids come and they look for organization and structure so that they can expect what to do.
Yeah. I feel like going off what David said, the kids take such ownership. I know if I know ahead of time, I'll be like, oh yeah, we're going to get a new friend tomorrow. And my kids, can I show them the morning routine? And like they pick amongst themselves who's going to show what thing. That way the kid doesn't become overwhelmed, right? With everybody flooding them, as first graders would like to do. So they assign, oh, I'll be them to show them lunch. I'll show them this. And they take that pride and ownership of it.
And I think if like a smooth running classroom boils down to anything, it is the culture and the community that you build. And when your students buy into that community at a level where they have trust, then they have pride. And so they want to share that with whoever's new, even if it's not a new student. When people come into the classroom, I feel like my kids sit up a little bit straighter and they just want to show that like we know the expectations and we're going to show it to everyone because they buy into the community and we have the mutual respect. So I think almost everything comes back to that sense of building a trusting community where you have buy-in. And they know they can count on you. And then you can count on them to be their best version when it comes to a new student or a quick change in schedule or something like that.
But that's something you have to work on all year long. It's not something you do in the first 6 weeks of school. Okay, I'm done now, we're done. It's continuing with building that practice and building trust.
Reinforcement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you totally realize that when we do things like in the January, when we go over our soaring expectations. I don't know. I feel like we're all in the same boat. Sometimes if your classroom is running efficiently, sometimes going over those things seems a bit redundant because the kids do know already what to do and they can tell you, but I just use it as, oh, well, other people might not know what to do. And so sometimes reviewing those rules, even school-wide, is important. And it gives them that buy-in to say, oh, I saw or I've noticed, and you can talk about different issues that might be going around the school.
Now, I also try to put the expectations back on them. What should be doing right now? And things, what's the expectation? And, oh, yeah. So if they, instead of me saying, oh, you're doing something wrong, what's the expectation right now? And they correct themselves.
Another question is, I'm wondering, when your focus is so much on instruction, how do you keep things, first of all, keep the pace moving, but then also keep things fun and interesting and engaging for kids? Tell me a little
I
bit about
ask
that.
myself this every day because in fifth grade Quest, we have quite a scope and we need to move at a very fast pace. And I think it might be my first thought every morning is, how am I going to make it fun today? And a lot of that for me, and I know that every teacher has their own style, is because I project that onto them. So then yesterday during social studies, I was kind of dramatically bouncing around the room about these different explorers who want that land for themselves, and just the, I don't know, acting, I guess, that I put into the demonstration of that social studies lesson. The kids are laughing. And then as they're taking their notes, they're not even realizing, like, you just took 3-column notes. They're just hearing a story and they're reading out loud in their book and doing all the things that we know is good instruction. But it's the enthusiasm, I think, that you bring to it. A lot of the time when you have to move quickly through a lot of material, there's not always time for multiple different manipulatives, or it's more about what you're projecting, and then you see that reflected.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yesterday we were doing story problems, and story problems are hard. And I'm using GLAD color coding for them to think about their start, change, and unknown with it. And I was like, yeah, like we're going to do this super fun. And they're like, that was the most fun. Mind you, we just solved 10 story problems together. And they were highlighting based on where the start was. And then they're like, oh, here's the key word. And they like turn to each other and go, didn't you just have the best time? And so just having that energy and being like, even saying, oh, here's your 3 different colors, like having a color is exciting to them because it's the secret sauce is what I call it with them. So
I totally agree. I mean, CKLA is sometimes deep and, oh, how do you keep them engaged? Well, because they truly believe that I am very interested in the Renaissance, or that I'm very interested in the Middle Ages. And they do feed off of that energy and so not always using, sometimes it's hard in CKLA in the upper grades because the stories will read aloud, which is wonderful in like the early American civilizations because there's a lot of words you don't know. But I find it, listening to it kind of is a little more humdrum than if I'm reading it and explaining as I go and I'm, making it. They really believe, I do believe in 4th grade, they thought I really had studied maybe Muhammad and that I knew all these things because I was so excited for them to understand it. So it's all about what you project to them.
You know, what you made me remember, I'm sorry, David, is that I taught 3rd grade Quest for 1 year, and the smaller the human, the scarier to me. So I didn't stay there for long. They're tiny humans. But one of the things that we did is we wrote letters to the king, to King George, and then he wrote back. And it was 5th grade Quest students who wrote back to them when they really thought they were getting a letter from the king. And I forget that when you put the magic in, then you have to kind of stay with it the whole time, because something was said at one point. They realized that it wasn't actually from the king, but just, it's that magic. It's that like energy. And yeah, if you can put that into your teaching, it's fun to be at school.
Yeah. We're going to learn about the Renaissance today.
Exactly. It's like, it's that perky pace. You go on fast enough so they don't get bored, but not slow enough you're not going to lose them. Sometimes it's, when you're doing things like the magic, sometimes you pull on a highlighter, get different color pens, and that's fun. Let's get out the sticky notes, do something that they enjoy, that kind of stuff. So when I'm thinking about lessons, I'm thinking about student interactions. What are they doing through the lesson? What do I want them out of? What do I want to accomplish by the end of the lesson? Thinking what barriers do I need to, can I predict or think might happen teaching this lesson? How can I remove those barriers? And by being organized at that, I'm going to maximize my teaching time. And having the kids involved, whether it's like telephysical responses sometimes, or even just talking in funny voices. When I was in a math lesson the other day, I want to find, I'm just okay, pick a card, any card type thing. And I know a few card tricks. I started off doing a couple of hard tricks. Whoa! And so did some number building and some things like that. But then, then ended with magic trick also, just doing those fun things.
Yeah.
It's just kids like, best math lesson ever. It's like, it was simple, but sometimes just being a little goofy, talking in funny voices, doing a little dance or something, and they enjoy it.
And intentional planning.
The organization, what you said. Yeah. So behind the scenes, right, having the planning, the organization in place, but then the presentation just feels like magic tricks and fun and silly voices. But it wouldn't work, I don't think, without like very strategic, very organized, thoughtful planning.
I mean, you have to know what you're doing every minute of the day. So you can't say, I'm going to teach CKLA during this time. I need to know exactly what I'm doing and have the materials, like look ahead.
You just don't walk in, look, okay, let's teach this. Okay, here we go. Okay, can't do that. No.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the work that you do with your students every day. They are lucky to have you. So thank you, Pope team.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this Encore episode of TandL Talks. I hope you found yourself nodding along, picking up new ideas, or simply appreciating the clarity and intentionality that these master teachers bring to their craft. One of the things I love most about episodes like this is how universal the themes are. Whether it's sharpening pencils in the morning, setting visual expectations, managing long campus transitions, or keeping lessons fun and fast-paced, these routines aren't about compliance. They're about creating conditions where students feel safe, successful, and engaged. A huge thank you again to the Pope team for sharing their practices so generously. Their commitment to community, to clarity, and to honoring every minute of students' learning time is something we can all learn from. If this episode sparked an idea, inspired you to revisit your routines, or reminded you of the importance of teaching expectations explicitly, share it with your colleague, your PLC, or your grade level team. These conversations grow stronger when they travel. And as always, if you are a TandLer with a topic you'd love for us to explore or a story you think deserves to be highlighted, just reach out. This podcast is for you, and it's shaped by the work you do every day to support students, families, and each other. If you want to stay connected to the conversations shaping teaching and learning, make sure to follow TandL Talks on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or iHeartRadio. When you follow the show, new episodes land right in your feed, ready whenever you are, so you never miss ideas that you can take straight back to your classroom or your team. Thanks again for listening, TandLers, and thank you for everything you do to keep learning centered. Until next time, take care and keep leading the learning.